In this tutorial series, I'm going to show you how to draw a wall section for the home that we have been documenting. We will draw the actual building components and assemblies. We will also work on how to utilize line weights in section. The wall section is at 3/4 of an inch equals 1 foot scale. By using a larger scale than our other drawings so far, we can show more detail in the wall section that we would not be able to do otherwise. This allows us to show most of the building components that make up our wall. It helps us understand exactly how the house will be built and what materials we will use to build it. Therefore, it is a good idea to understand the exact size of those materials and what their functions are inside the wall section. I suggest you read through the list of building components in the instructions as you examine the wall section drawing that includes the notes. And that's what I have open here. So here are my instructions, and these show in the details a list of all the building components that will be in this wall section. They are listed approximately from the bottom to the top. So we start at the foundation with the footing and work our way all the way to the top of the wall section. So if you're trying to figure out where these are, that will help you sort of understand in the wall where they're located, top to bottom. And I suggest reading through this list as you look at this, which is the wall section. This is essentially the same as your final deliverable, only that you don't need to place notes or dimensions on your drawing. So read through those notes as you look at this drawing. And this drawing includes some notes as well. So it points to some of those things in the instruction notes. The instruction notes are a little bit more comprehensive. It lists everything that might not exactly be listed here. A lot of times I won't have something noted here because it would be redundant, whereas in the notes and the instructions I do have them listed. Before we get started, it's important to understand exactly where this section is being cut. In your instructions, it has this location. So we're in the dining room in our double mold window unit, and we're cutting through the wall here. And we're looking north. So the exterior is going to be on the left hand side of our drawing, and the interior is going to be on the right hand side of our drawing. I'm going to jump to CAD now, to AutoCAD. So again, this is exactly where we're going to be cutting this drawing. So we're cutting it through what I've been calling the bump out, this portion of the building. We're going all the way down into the basement and up to the roof structure of the bump out itself. So if you look here in our elevation, we're going to be cutting, we're going to end the section somewhere on the second floor, right above the second floor around here. We're going to be cutting through this roof structure, down through the interior of the building, and then into the basement. So that's the first thing you want to do, is sort of familiarize yourself with where this is going to be cut. And we're cutting through a window, so we're going to see what this looks like in section. I'm going to start my drawing with this building section. Much like many of our other drawings, I always try to start by using a drawing that already exists, that has some information that I already need in my new drawing. Now we're looking in the wrong direction for my wall section. My wall section looks opposite this building section. So what I want to do first is copy this. I'm just going to copy it downwards. Again, sort of a comfortable distance. You can see how many different drawings I have in my own file here. I have them spaced a comfortable distance so that when I place them inside a viewport on my layout tabs in my paper space, I have enough room so that I don't include anything else. Now that I've copied it down, as I mentioned, this is looking in the opposite direction. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this around using the mirror command. So MI, enter. I'm going to select this entire thing, and I'm just going to use my ridge as my point, drag a vertical line, and when it asks me to erase the source objects, I'm going to say yes, because that'll just flip this entire section. And I'm going to erase pretty much everything from these windows to the right side of my drawing. I'm just going to hit delete. I'm also going to delete this window because this building section was cut through the kitchen, and now I'm cutting through the dining room, so that window is going to look different, especially because we're adding a lot more detail. Going to also delete all of this porch railing and post. And now I have a good start for my wall section. I should also note that with the amount of detail that we put in our building section, some of these lines may not exactly be in the right place, but this at least gives us a good start. The way that I like to draw my wall sections is I like to start just like you would build the house. Start at the foundation and work your way up. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So let's examine our finished wall section. I'm going to start with the footing and the basement slab and the foundation wall and all the things that go along with that. The crushed stone base, these perforated drains, my rigid insulation. Let's start with the concrete footing. It's an 8-inch by 16-inch concrete footing, and it has this key that the foundation wall goes into. So I'm going to double check how I drew my footing in the building section, and it is in fact 8 by 16. My wall, my foundation wall, is 8 inches as well. So all of these lines can remain. I'm going to draw the key. Keys are typically 2x4s that are set into the formwork, but they're shown at an angle because you want to give it some what we call draft angle so that that can be pulled out of the cured concrete. For now, I'm going to draw most of my lines on the color 004 layer. I will work on getting my line weights correct as I go through this, but I'm going to get some stuff drawn first. So I'm going to start by drawing a line across the bottom of my foundation. I'm going to draw kind of in space a 2x4. So a 2x4 is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to rotate this line, let's say 30 degrees. That looks pretty good. So I rotated that line around this base point and I got 30 degrees. And now I'm going to extend that line. Now, oops, that is what I'm calling my draft angle. Now I can mirror that line using the midpoint of my 2x4. I can trim those lines, and now I can move this, and I'm going to use my shift right click mid between 2 points, this point and this point, and I'm going to place that at the center line of this line, which is the 8-inch of my foundation thickness. Now I can trim to those lines that, and I can draw a new line up to here. So there's my key. Every now and then I double check a few dimensions if I drew something and it doesn't quite look right. Now my footing continues to this side. Now the way we drew this in building section was as if this was only a 4-inch slab. But as we start to develop our drawings beyond design development drawings and we start to develop them into construction drawings, which this wall section really is a construction drawing, we're going to start adding more detail and really thinking about how this slab is going to be built. And as you can see from our final deliverable with the notes, we're actually placing 2 inches of rigid insulation below our 4-inch slab. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. Whoops, went to the wrong drawing there. So I can get rid of this line, and that 2 inches of rigid insulation, the bottom of that, aligns with the top of my footing. So I can offset 2 inches upwards. And then I can also offset, well, actually, before I even do that, I'm going to maintain that 2-inch offset because we have 2 inches of insulation along our basement wall. Now I can repeat offset 4 inches is what I'm going to set it to for my slab. I also have 4 inches of stone below my insulation, so I'm going to repeat offset with the 4-inch and drop that down here. Now I can start cleaning some of this up. We know that it doesn't really matter where our insulation goes here. If you think about how this might be placed, this vertical insulation, the way that I have it drawn now, goes in first and then this does. So there is a line there. Keep going to the wrong drawing there. So we are going to extend that line down to there, extend these lines over to here. And you know, I'm showing a lot more of the building section, or I'm showing more of the building than I would in my wall section, but I can worry about that later. So I've got all my lines in here. Now I need a 4-inch drain tile. So looking here, this is 8 inches deep. I would say this is about 8 inches deep this way, and this is a 4-inch drain tile. So I am going to draw a line showing this bed of crushed stone, which in our drawing we can see goes down to the foundation, down to the bottom of the footing. And I'm going to go over 8 inches. And then I'm going to simply go up on a 45-degree angle. So this crushed stone base, this 4 inches of crushed stone below the slab and the insulation, needs to get a little deeper right here at our footing so that we can put in a drain. Now sometimes you'll almost always see an external drain. We always need a drain on the outside. A drain on the inside is a good idea in wet areas. It's also just a better practice. So we're going to throw in a 4-inch circle. And I'm going to move that. I just drew that sort of randomly, and then I'm going to use the center point. And again, my shift right click mid between 2 points. I'm going to click sort of the midpoints of that box, if you consider this a box, an 8-inch by 8-inch box with a 4-inch circle in it. I'm going to offset. I don't really know the thickness exactly of that pipe, but a 1/4 inch is about the most I'll ever see in a 3/4 inch scale drawing, which this is. Now, I could do my exterior drain, and most people know me that I don't like to draw things twice, so I'm going to simply mirror this. And I'm going to use the center line of or the midpoint of my footing and mirror that over there. I do not want to erase the source objects. And you can see that this kind of comes out. Generally what you want to do or show in your drawings is your exterior drain is going to be encapsulated with this crushed stone, and it tends to be in an area that goes a little bit above the footing, and this entire thing will be wrapped in geotextile fabric to prevent dirt from getting into our crushed stone. So I'm just going to grab this line, looks good, and then I'm going to bring that up on some angle. It doesn't have to be exact, so I'm going to grab that and bring that up to there. Now the other thing that I have on this wall is a drainage mat. Now what that allows to happen is any water that does flow through the soil and meets this wall, this foundation wall, will encounter this drainage mat, and all that water will fall down this drainage mat and drain into our stone bed here and into our drain tile and away from our building, because water is the enemy. So we're going to offset 1/2 inch to the outside face of our foundation. Now I have most of my elements, most of my line elements that I need. Now let's start talking about line weight. So our cut line, the thing that we're actually cutting through, is going to be our heaviest line, and that is going to remain this color 004 or cyan color. So anything we cut through, anything that is inside of the cut, for the most part, I will be drawing with a yellow layer. So let's start to change the line weight of these lines to match that standard. So this here is going to become yellow. The joint, and anywhere where one material butts up against another material within the cut, I'm going to make yellow. And now I can use, now that I have some yellow here, I can use my match properties button, and I'm going to paint that color in other places. Now this is two lines. I can delete that line, and I can extend that line down to here, because again, we never want to use two lines when we can use one. And if I think about what I'm cutting through my footing, and I'm coming up to my insulation, and that's going to be cyan. So everything within that cut is going to be yellow. So I'm going to again grab this, paint that, this line. Now I need a yellow line from this point here down, because my cut runs down the face of this insulation and over my slab. So I'm going to trim that back to there, add in a new line, and then paint that line with the yellow color. For my drain tiles, I'm cutting through the outside edge, but there is a void here inside. So I will generally, anywhere where I'm next to a void within a cut, I tend to make green. These lines here represent the edges of a fill. I don't really consider that part of the cut. And let me trim this one back. But because they're containing a fill, I generally put them on the pattern layer or the hatch layer, whatever you want to call it. This line here is also yellow. And now I'm pretty much done this area, my footing area. Don't forget to hit save. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding a few break lines in, because as you can see in our final deliverable, we break the floor, the basement floor, the first floor, and the second floor using break lines, because we don't need to show any more of the drawing. It wouldn't fit on the page, so we break it using a break line. The other thing that we do is, to get this thing to fit vertically on this piece of paper, we break our foundation wall, our basement wall, with two break lines, and we remove some height. So what I'm going to do that now. I'm going to start my, and I generally put my break lines on a fairly heavy line weight. So I'm going to use color 005 or blue. I'm going to use the break line command, and I'm going to place, I'm going to use that bottom line to the top line and then use my center point. Now I think I have my break line, let me see, break line size. Right now I have it set to 4 inches, and I found that to be pretty comfortable. So you may want to set your break line size to 4 inches. I always extend these out a little bit. And then now I can trim to that break line all of these lines. I can copy this break line because I like the size of it. And I use a midpoint, because now I can come to my wall and I can use any 2 points on either side of my wall, and it'll place that break symbol right smack in the middle of this assembly. And now I can rotate it again about that same point, 90 degrees. I can move that down. Actually, I'm going to move it up. Let's look at how much space we have here. Let's call it, 2'6", 3 feet. So I'm going to eyeball that here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to trim all of those lines that pass through that break to show that it is being broken. And now I'm going to use my stretch command. So S stretch, a right to left box around all the elements that I want to stretch. And then I'm just going to choose a spot out in space here and bring that up to about there. Now I want to make sure I have enough room to put my notes in, but then again, you guys aren't doing notes, so maybe you don't have to worry about that. Now that I have this line in, I have areas that I can hatch. So I'm going to move to my pattern layer again. I'm going to start with the concrete. So I'm going to type H, enter, to execute the hatch command. And in my hatch creation ribbon, I'm going to go to the pattern panel, click this button right here, and I can scroll up and down, but actually right at the top there's this ARCONC, AR concrete. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to click, do I have pick points? I'm going to click in those places. Now my scale of that hatch is 1, and that doesn't look too bad. I'm actually going to jump over to my finished one and see what I did. I think I used 0.5 here. Let's go with 0.5. So I can select that hatch now and go back into the scale, type 5, oops, 0.5. Now I can hatch my slab. I like to have all these hatches as separate entities. And I'm not going to do the top of my wall yet because this is a big open space and it won't allow me to hatch that. And this is still the wrong scale over here, so simple enough, use my match properties and paint that to that hatch. I've got crushed stone in these areas, so I'm going to hatch that. H, enter. And for that, there's something called gravel. I like that hatch there. So I'm going to do one, and then I'm going to do another over here. Now that's pretty small. Again, I'm going to refer back to, no, I think that's about what I had there. That is a scale of 2 is what I did for my drawing. And right now it's set to 1, so let's set that to 2. That looks better. Now we're going to do our rigid insulation. That hatch is something called net. It's just a crosshatch, a 90-degree crosshatch. Now obviously that is the wrong scale, but we're going to get that one in there, and let's try 2. Nope, that's still not. Let's try 5. 5 looks pretty good. Again, I'm going to refer back to my original because I don't honestly remember what I made it. 6. Okay. And see, this is exact, I don't remember this stuff. You just have to kind of trial and error sometimes on the sizes of what looks appropriate for things like hatch. Now everything else has an actual dimension. So now we have our drawing finished up to the first break line with hatch, with the proper line weights, and all of the correct components. In the next tutorial, we'll move on from here.